This is Gemara and Chagigah Daf Chof Zayin. We'll learn if this month has been generously sponsored as the Schusi L'Neshama for Rav Shlomo ben Rameir in conjunction with the new Sefer, the Laws of Chanukah and Purim, which should be in stores by now. Mirza Hashem, the learning of the entire Chabura should bring an incredible L'Neshama to Rav Shlomo ben Rameir to bring Ayla to a higher and higher place in Gan Eden Shal Ma'ila. As well as all the learning should be as Chos Shidduch for Yisrael Chaim and the version. Remember, as it's good to Shem Netzach Shana Makal Lever Chos Shem Netzach Chos Shem Shendel Shem Lim Yizabel V'Getav Shem Chaya. As well as the Chos Shivur Shem Shal Yivden V'Edem and V'Meigo Chaim Yisrael Shem Sin Reis Zervas Kinadita Vasem Zechai Yisrael Mendel Eliezer Perez in the Jalei Shem V'Zami V'Shavik V'Shevchan Shemot Tilin Chon Reis V'Chai V'Asvina Adinena V'Shemed Atziv V'Gdor Revka V'Shem Natzalim V'Chos Amrina Kotzar Baskil Shem Yisrael V'Nes Frol Avram and Rachel Dei Shem V'Chana V'Gav Herel Bas Hester Yal Yehudis Bas Alei Shalom Zmer Gabriel Bas Lumi So Yisrael V'Dina V'Soyich Sha'ar Chayla Yisrael, an exciting shir, the final shir not only of Chagigah, the final shir of the entirety of Seder Mayid. Again, who would have thought a little more than 2 years ago when we started Brachos Daf Beis, we would be here today. Amazing, incredible, ashkayach to everyone. Apologies, we're not going to celebrate together, but we'll just begin before we even start with a bracha that we should continue learning many, many more davim together. And now let's pick it up. We're holding on Chavavim Abiz. We're about 15 lines at the bottom. The first word on the line is halachai. We're in the middle of discussing whether the shulchan could potentially have tumah or not. And we finished up yesterday that there was a potential for tumah. Why is there a potential for tumah? The shulchan should be a kli eitz that's not made to be moved. And the rule is when we have a kli eitz, a wooden vessel, it's not made to be moved. It's not mikabel tumah. So we explained yesterday we're going with the opinion of Reish Lakish. And Reish Lakish said they used to move the shulchan. They would pick it up and they would show the regalim, say, look how much Hashem loves us. The bread is fresh like the moment we put it in. And that is the reason why there was a potential tumah on the shulchan. And that is the reason why they had to warn the koyanim amaratzim when they were oile regel, don't touch the shulchan. Because Talmid has to always be here and we don't want to have to purify the shulchan like the other vessels. But I asked the Gemara 1 second, typically, Bishop Siboy, why do we say that the reason the shulchan is mekabel tumah is for a different reason? Not like you Reish Lakish said, because you pick it up and it's movable. Because of the Siboy, the plating, it's metal. The shulchan is covered. And therefore, if the shulchan is made out of gold, out of metal, metal is mekabel tumah. The Atanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, shulchan v'adulfki sheniftachu, we have the shulchan. If we have a shulchan, any table, or a dlufki is a wooden, or a wooden chair or a wooden table, shenivchasu, they became reduced, they shrunk a little bit, they got damaged. Oishachifon b'shayir, you cover them with marble. V'shayir b'hem makam anachas kaisis, and there's enough area that's not covered with marble to put something on it. Tami, then it is tami, because there's an area to use that's not covered. Rav Yehuda remember makam anachas chatichos, not just an area to put a cup, but to put down bread, etc. So if there's an area that's not plated, not covered, then it's megabel tum, then it is tamei. But if not, if there's not an area, meaning if it's fully covered, then it's going to be mikabel tuma. In this case it's opposite, because in this case it's made out of marble. So if the marble covers the table, that there's no area left, there's no wooden surface not to put down a cup, not to put down bread or meat, etc., then it's not the mikabel tumah. Why? Because it's no longer a wooden vessel, and rather it's a regular stone vessel, and stone is not mikabel tumah. But what does that have to do with us? We see that we go with the plating, that if something is fully plated, it will change the status of the item. So ask the Gemara in our case, when the shulchan is fully plated with gold, it should be mekabel tumah. But chidema, perhaps you're going to suggest shining eitzei shitim dechashivi, the atzei shitim. This past week's parsha, as we concluded the Mishkan, the famous atzei shitim brought into the Mishkan from Yaakov Avinu, the Messiah and the Mishkan. The atzei shitim oimdin, they will be let forever and ever. The Mishkan was never destroyed. Perhaps atzei shitim were so valuable. Maybe that's the reason it never will be bought, it will never be subordinate to the metal that is covered. So maybe that's why. So explains the Gemara, it's not simple. Makes sense according to Reish Lakish that says that the only time that the plating does not take over the whole utensil is by kliach saljin abon medina SIYUM. It's regard to utensils that are made out of cheap achsilgish wood. But in case of me misamim wood, very chashuv wood, loiba li shabir, then you're right. According to Reish Lakish, you have to look at the value of the item itself. If the wood of the item itself is of a cheaper value, then the plating takes over. But if the item itself is made out of a chashuv type of wood, like this misamim wood, then it would not. So too by us in the Mishkan. If it's made from atzei shitim, that's very, very chashuv wood. But that's only Reish Lakish. Nami Bali. According to Reish Lakish, I don't care what the item is made out of. Once it's plated, once it's covered, the covering takes over the status of the utensil. So, what are you going to say? According to Rabbi Yochanan, the shulchan should be makabel tama because it's covered with gold. Another suggestion. Maybe you'll tell me maybe there's different types of tzipuyim. Maybe there's a tzipuy when it comes to the kelim. The tzipuy, the plating, is one in which when it comes to that table and it came to that folding chair, when it was covered with marble, that was by a plating that was anchored down. It was hammered in. But when it came to the shulchan, the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, it wasn't anchored in. It was just covered over. So maybe then it will not take over and will not have the status of the plating. It says the Gemara, we already discussed this. This was a discussion. Is it if it's anchored or not? Does it apply only when it covers the rim or not? And Rabbi Yochanan responded, Rabbi Yochanan said, whether it's anchored, whether it's covered, whether it's not, whether it's covering the rim or not, it's irrelevant. So Rabbi Yochanan answered, it makes no difference. In any case, the plating, when something is fully encapsulated, fully plated, fully covered with a metal, the status of the item is like a metal. So says the Gemara, one big question. So in the Mishkan, why isn't the shulchan makabel tama? Because it's gold, it's not wood. You started off yesterday and told me because Reish Lakish, he picks up the shulchan, they showed it to them. Who cares? The bottom line is it's made out of gold. It should not have the status of a wooden galing because it's plated entirely with gold. Answers the Gemara, la shiny shulchan. The shulchan was different. As we turn over to Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, why was the shulchan different? Terachmana karya eitz. Because the Torah calls it eitz. You're right, it's plated, and you're right, it's made out of gold, and you're right, it should have the status of a golden utensil. But when the Torah lists something, the Torah gives it the name, that's what wins. And the Torah called it wood. It says Mizbeach of wood that was 3 amos. Told this apostle in Yechezkel referring back to what the Mizbeach was. And the length was 2 amos miksa, and the corners aloi v'arkai. Its corners and its length v'kiroisav, and the walls were 8 of wood. And he spoke to and the angel said, "This is the shulchan that is in front of Hashem." So we see that the pasuk listed as 8, calls it 8, and therefore, even though it's covered, it's plated, it's gold, it still has the status of wood, and that's the reason why it is not a mekabel toma. The only reason why it would be mekabel toma is, like we said yesterday, the end of Shir and Reish Lakish, because they picked up the shulchan to show everyone the fresh hot bread, how much Hashem loves us. Says the Gemara, going on the previous pasuk 4 lines down, the pasuk was very strange. The pasuk said Hamizbeach 8, and the end of the pasuk, if we were to zoom in over here a little bit in the pasuk in Yechezkel, what does it say? Hamizbeach 8, and the end of the pasuk says Zahashulchan Asher Levnei Hashem. We actually could have seen that in the Gemara itself, but either way, says the Gemara, what's going on? Is it the shulchan or is it the mizbeach? Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they both explain Migdash Kayom, that what's going on over here is we're discussing when the Beis HaMikdash is. We're discussing when. Excuse me. Yes, let's just turn everything off over here. There we go. Says the Gemara, we're discussing when the Beis Hamikdash is around Mechaper. Bisman sheBeis Hamikdash came Mizbeach Mechaper Ladam. Achshav Shulchanai Shaladam Mechaper Alav. An important lesson. Says the Gemara, when we have a Beis Hamikdash, what gives us a kapara? What gives us an atonement? It is the Mizbeach. But we no longer have the Mizbeach. What gives us the kapara? It's the shulchan of a person when one gives achnasas archim, when one gives aniyim to eat, when one gives people who need a meal. That gives a person kapara at the same level as the shulchan that was in the time, as the Mizbeach that was, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. And now we continue quoting the Mishnah 7 lines down. Chav Zayin and Aleph. All the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash had secondary replacements, had third replacements of them in case they became tamei. But the Mishnah concluded, the Mishnah said, but the Mizbeach Hazav and Mizbeach Hanechoshes did not need replacements. Why not? Because they were made out of earth and they were not mekabel tama. So the Gemara explains, Mizbeach Hanechoshes, how do I know? The Torah teaches Mizbeach Adama Tasali, calls him Mizbeach Adama. Mizbeach Hazav, how do I know? The Chsev HaMenorah Mizbechois in the plural. So Hishkes Mizbeach Hazel Azaz, so it teaches us that both the Mizbeach have the same status, and therefore they're both going to become Mizbeach Adama, and they're not going to be Mekabel Dama. But the Chachamim Ma'imrim, 3 lines on the white lines, and Eishei Mitzupim, Chachamim said they're plated. If they are cold, then they are Mekabel Dama, because they have the status of their plating, whether it's cold or copper, Mizbeach Hazav, Mizbeach Hanechoshes. Ask the Gemara. We think right now that the Chachamim are on the same team as Rabbi Eliezer, but they're giving a different reason why it's not Mekabel Toma, which is a bit difficult because I just explained it the other way, because that's the Maskana. But we think right now that the Chachamim said Memnei Shein Mitzupim, because they're pleaded, that's a reason it's not Mekabel Toma. So the Gemara now asks the obvious question, the opposite. Given the Mitzupim Inu Betamu, because it's plated, it should have the status of gold, it should have the status of copper, and it should yes be Mekabel Tama. Explains the Gemara, no, read the Mishnah as follows. Chachamim say it's Tameh, because it's Mitzupim, because it's plated, therefore has the status of gold and copper, it's Mekabel Tama. Says the Gemara, second answer, Rabbanan the Rav Elazar. Kamri, the Rabbanan are talking to Rav Elazar. Those said they're not Mekabel Toma because they have the status of the earth, Adama. Says the Rabbanan, my daitoch. What do you think? Asks the Rabbanan to Rav Elazar. You're quoting a pasuk, Mizbeach Adama, Mishom de Mitzupin. You should really say the reason is because they're metal, because they're Mitzupin, and yes be Mekabel Toma. And therefore you need the pasuk, Mizbeach Adama, to say that. Meaning, the Rav Elazar sounded like he's saying it's not Mekabel Toma, and now there's a pasuk. So the Rabbanan are saying to Rav Elazar, the way you should have spoken is said that really it should be Mekabel Toma. Why? Because it's plated, it's cold, it's copper. But now that we have a pasuk, it's not. And the Torah would be teaching us, Mizbeach Adama, it's called Adama, that even though it's covered, the plating, the covering is batal, it's subordinate to the item itself. And therefore, that is how the Rabbanan said back to Rav Elazar, that is the way you should have spoken. And now says the Gemara, we're going to conclude a little bit. Amar Rav Avu, Amar Rav Elazar, Talmidei Chachamim, Einar Shel Genim Shaletes Bahem, Talmidei Chachamim, anyone who's sitting and learning Dafei Gemara, Talmidei Chachamim, the fire of Genim cannot rule over them. Kavachaymer Misalandria, it's a Kavachaymer from this item called Salandria, which is a certain magical creature. Rashi explains that it's created from a fire left burning for 7 years. 7 years in one area, and then creates this magical beast, Salandria. My Salandria, Salandria, something came out of fire. There was a fire burning, and it created this entity called Salandria. It's a toiledes. It's the child. It's the offspring of fire. Hasach medame in ar shaletes boy. And yet, if you take if you smear yourself with the blood of this Salandria, the fire will not harm you. Talmidei Chachamim shekol gufan ish. The Talmid Chacham is not a toiledos ish. It's not an offspring of fire. Talmid Chacham is fire itself. How do I know? The pasuk says, "Are my words mighty as fire?" Says Hashem, "Malachas kama v'kama." That the fire cannot burn them. The fire can't touch someone who just takes something from the salandria, the offspring of fire. Certainly something which is the entity of fire itself. And Amar Reish Lakish in Arshal Gahanim Shaletis V'Poishe Yisrael. Reish Lakish concludes with a bit of a chizik. The fire of Gehenna doesn't even touch the Poishe Yisrael, the sinners. Kal v'chaymer mi mizbeach hazav. Ma mizbeach hazav, the golden altar, she'ina oil love, eloka'ivei dinner. How thick was the covering? Just the thickness of a golden dinner. Azav kama shanim inar shaletes boy. It was the thickness koivi dinner zav and kama shanim inar shaletes boy. Many years the fire doesn't penetrate it, even though it's a very thin layer. Poishe Yisrael shemimalin mitzvahs kirimain. Even the sinners in Klal Yisrael are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. D'chsev kepelech harimain garkoseich, as the pasuk says that the section of a pomegranates are like your temples. Al tikri rakoseich ela rekonim shebach, the empty ones, and even they are filled like pomegranates. Alachas kama kama. How much more so that the fire of Gehenna will not touch them, even the Poishe Yisrael, certainly one who's not a Poishe Yisrael. Hadron Allah Chaymer b'Mikdash. B'Kodesh v'Slik Elam Esech Chagigah. We can also say Hadron Allah Seder Moed. We should do an incredible, fabulous fasting in Chazara. Halavai, the entirety, we should go right back to Brachas Daf Beis. We're going to have to go to Yevamos Daf Beis tomorrow. But we should be going back to Brachas Daf Beis. We should always try to inculcate a Chazara into our schedule. Mazel Tov and a tremendous koyach to everyone. It's only from all the listeners, the chizik I get, the fire comes from at the fact that we're all learning together, whether I'm sitting here with my camera in Eretz Yisrael, or here actually now in Flatbush. Regardless, it's the Chabura together that brings out the clarity. Mazel Tov, Mirz Hashem. We shall learn many more Mesechtais and Siddarim together. Moyit should just be the beginning, Nashim on the horizon, and soon enough, Gans Shas, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.